problem with clubs letting players go, because I'm not into sentiment in football. I'm not into one, he's been a good player, so we'll keep him on. I'm not into that at all. If he can still do a job for you, then you're foolish to get rid of him. Because you don't know, you don't know in a year's time what Frank Lampard's going to be like. You can only go on the evidence of what you see at the moment. He's playing well, still scoring goals, still looks a threat.
And the world's greatest football manager, Alex Ferguson, is prepared to keep 37 and 38-year-olds in his squad in the current situation.
Because he knows what he can do.
Thinks they can do. Let's find out what's going on physiologically here. Graeme Close, Dr. Graeme Close, to give him his full title, is a senior sports lecturer in sports nutrition. He's also the head of sports nutrition for Munster Rugby, which means he knows what he's talking about. And he joins us on the line now. Good evening, Graeme.
Good evening, Danny.
First of all, put me right, or am I? Or I have an inbuilt bias against top sportsmen over the age of 30, particularly in running around sports like football and rugby, because that's what I was brought up to believe. Is the world changing? Am I wrong, or do you need to do special things to keep these people at the top of their game?
I think there's a bit of a combination going on there, to be honest, Danny. If we take the most extreme example, and you look at somebody like Ed Whitlock, who at the age of 81 is still doing 1.5 hour half marathons, and at the age of 70 is doing sub 3 hour marathons. Inherently, if you do the correct training, physiologically, we can go on for, I wouldn't say indefinitely, but we can certainly go on for longer than people would suspect. And then if you take the example of a sprinting exercise, and you look at the likes of Linford Christie at 35 years of age doing sub 10 second 100 metres, inherently there isn't a problem with skeletal muscle. And we've got evidence from 70-year-old veteran cyclists, and when you actually take the muscle biopsy off these gentlemen, the muscle looks very similar to that of a 20 or 30-year-old younger person. The problem appears to be that getting the training wrong and actually becoming a little bit sedentary when we get older.
Graeme, I've always been told, and is this a myth then, that, if like quick players lose their pace? That's one of the major reasons why they don't continue playing at the top level. Is that so? That's wrong then, is it? If you've got the pace, you shouldn't really lose it if the training's right.
Well, a little bit to some extent. We know that as we get older that speed can decline a little bit. That's predominantly due to a decrease in stride length and a little bit of a problem with ground reaction time, and a little bit of problem with the fast twitch fibres, the type 2 fibres. They're the ones that deteriorate first when we start to get older. But with the correct training, we can offset a lot of that, getting the recovery right with modern physiology, modern methods. We can actually maintain flexibility, we can maintain strength. It's about giving the muscle the right stimulus. And in the modern era now, with the growing intelligence of the sports science support team, I think we've got the capacity to do this. And in terms of, yes, we do lose type 2 fibres a little bit faster, but this can be offsetted with the correct strength training. Yes, we do reduce our stride length, but again, this can be offsetted through full-time athletes now with improved flexibility, ice baths, etc. And actually, we can do a lot to combat this, so Graeme, I don't think it's inevitable.
And what's interesting to me, as someone who's come out of this from the wrong side of the argument, I think, for years and years and years, is that if there was no deterioration, if player A at 23 years of age is as good at the game as player B at 33 years of age, you would want player B probably in the team because he's seen it all and knows what to do. He's experienced. So we've seen AC Milan in professional football deliberately extending the careers of players and winning the Champions League, doing it as well with their medical facilities. Are you doing something similar with Munster's rugby players?
Well, to be completely honest, we've got a very forward-thinking head of strength and conditioning over at Munster Rugby, a gentleman called Bryce Kavanagh. And about 2 or 3 years ago now, he came up with what we call the Maldini Project, which is borrowing a sport that I'm not familiar with, football, where you guys are the experts, and looking at what we can do with some of our older players to actually get an extra 2 or 3 years out of them. Because what the coaching staff and conditioning staff at Munster have realised, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see this, is that some of our most influential talismanic players are over the age of 30. So we can squeeze 1, 2, 3 more years out of these legends of the game. We'll do everything in our capacity to do so. So they will get treated a little bit different in terms of the training plans, the recovery, even the nutrition strategies, and we'll do whatever we can to keep these people involved in the team situation.
Let me ask you...
Sorry, I just want to come a point on that. Does that mean that you've changed their training regime, what they do during the week? I mean, have you noticed a big change in maybe the amount of running that they're doing compared to what they were doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where they're not running it, like long distances, that it's more power running? Has there been a big change in other ways then?
Absolutely. Using GPS technology now, it's a lot easier now to keep a track on exactly what these players are doing. Start to look at early signs of fatigue and then pull them from the session if it's looking like they're going to get to that stage. There's a lot of evidence now, and certainly a lot of anecdotal evidence, looking at it's actually accumulation of fatigue. So if you can prevent this fatigue accumulating, you can actually prevent injury, and if you prevent injury, you're going to get a lot more out of the older athletes. So I think even little things like the GPS technology, so we can structure a training load. I know some rugby league teams in the Northwest who we work with who will use things such as putting the older players in the off-season in altitude chambers to do the training, so they don't need to work them as hard, but they'll still get a huge increase in the physiological capacity.
Listen, Graeme, I hope I'm not taking you out of your own comfort zone here, but I think there's another issue that we need to discuss, and that is the psychological or even a sociological one. Obviously, when you're 22 and making your way in a sport, and I'm looking at Ray for confirmation of this, you are obsessed with it. It is the whole of your life. It is the thing, the training is everything for you. And by definition, by the time you get to 30, 31, 32, you may have a family. You certainly probably have a partner. The sport still is the centre of your world, but it can't be everything. Do you have to deal differently with the psychological side of things when the players get older?
Well, again, with the modern support teams, the psychological support obviously is there. And I think you're exactly right there, Danny, in as much as you'll speak with players who will wake up one morning and say, that's it. They feel that's it, they've had enough. Now, that's not suddenly they've woken up and there's been a huge change in their physiology overnight. It's maybe that can they put themselves through another pre-season? Can they put themselves through the day-to-day ice baths, massage, stretching, physiotherapy that's needed to keep at that level? And yes, them systems are in place. So if any athlete really wants to push themselves and take themselves into the mid-30s and, dare I say, early 40s, it can certainly happen. If you look over to my sport of rugby, in particular rugby league, one of the best players last year was Stephen Menzies, who's approaching 40. And I don't think we're a million miles off an era where we're going to see late 30, 40-year-old elite athletes.
In rugby league?
In rugby league.
Wow.
Well, look at Stephen Menzies last year, probably one of the better forwards in the game. Kept himself in remarkable condition, and I wouldn't be. I think he's playing again this season. I wouldn't be surprised if he talked into another one after that.
And how important is diet? How's that changed the sport, all sports?
Do you know, as far as I'm concerned, for the better, being a nutritionist who's working in elite sport, it's fantastic. But a lot of the teams now are seeing the importance of the nutritionist.
Do you think it had a big effect on players, all sportsmen?
Oh, unbelievably. From a variety of factors, I think we now see sportsmen in a lot better shape than what we used to. But the day of the people carrying that little bit of extra weight around the field seems to be going. But we can look specifically at how to help these fellas recover the day after, not only by looking at some of these novel compounds that may facilitate the recovery process, but also just by getting the actual general diet right. I know in my era as a player, the day after a game, you would often stay in bed, get a lie-in, rock up to the club around about lunchtime. You've missed the start of the recovery process.
Get a pie and chips.
Exactly, yeah, post-game pie and chips. We try and really avoid that now and look at how the food would affect the inflammatory process. We look at what foods might delay muscle soreness and how we can actually start to replace muscle glycogen as soon as possible after the game. So yeah, I think diet and nutrition's played a huge part, and I think that's one of the reasons that we will see these 40-year-old athletes.
Do you think players now of all sports are much fitter than they once were? Is that down to their diets and down to the sort of people like yourself looking after them?
Yeah, and I think it's an unfair comparison to make, because we've got to remember that we are in an era now of full-time professionals, and not just for full-time professional players, but full-time professional coaching staff. I think I was listening to TalkSport coming home from work today when somebody mentioned that Sam Allardyce at one point had 19 players and 19 support staff. Yeah. And, I don't think it's a fair comparison to compare the modern player with the one of old. I think given the technology, we wouldn't have seen a difference. But yes, I think undoubtedly we've got fitter players at the moment because of that. But with that, it brings added disadvantages in that, these players are working, especially in rugby, for example, they're going into contacts and collisions now a lot more frequently and a lot harder. And that brings with it new challenges as well.
Listen, it's been fantastic and fascinating to talk to you, Graeme. That's Dr. Graeme Close, the head of nutrition with the Munster rugby team, and of course, a rugby league expert as well. And he says that their players are, without trying to denigrate the previous, fitter later in their lives. And we'll be talking to someone from Opta after the break to discover if that being around in the mid-30s. I can see the regret in your face, Ray.
I can see it now, Dan.
The fact, are we actually seeing more players doing well in the Opta stats who are what would previously been described as over the hill? I will also bring you some news that will once again reveal to you what a genius of cloak and dagger Harry Redknapp is.
The Barclays Premier League on Talk Sport.
And he scored again!
This Sunday from noon, hear live exclusive national radio commentary of Chelsea